No drinks, no tip. So, I'm working at a huge party / concert / miscellaneous event location, and I'm the guy responsible for refilling the bars with drinks every time the bartender makes an order. I'm also picking up the used glasses and pints to bring them to the washing station we have. In general, I'm the guy who helps the bars running there. Sometimes there are 2 or 3 of us in a shift, but other times not. There can be nights that there are 5 bars open, and the place is full with around 3,000 people. Just to give you a taste of what the job looks like when the place is packed on a typical Friday / Saturday night, imagine that you have to carry and deliver around 20 beer kegs, each with a weight of 65 kilograms or 130 pounds, and around 60 cases of beer and soft drinks just when you start your shift. When something goes out at the bar, the bartender makes a new order that I have to deliver. And this goes on all night long from 17 till 6 in the morning. And sometimes there are parties that go till 11 in the morning. To give another taste of how big this place is, during a normal shift, according to my phone, I'm walking 28 kilometers or 17 miles. Where I come from, we call this job runner. The unwritten law there is like this. Each bartender has to give 20% of the tips they make each night to the runner, because without a runner, he would have no drinks to serve. Nobody can really know who is really giving the 20% of their tip, but that's another story. But every bartender is giving me something. Usually it's a lot, and all sides are happy. In comes a new guy, and the staff manager explains to him the unwritten rule, saying exactly these words. You don't want to have problems with any of the runners, so be fair. When you're doing this job for a while, you know if the tip you get is going to be good or not. Fast forward, huge metal fest with all bars open, 3 different stages plus outdoor bars, etc. Plus after show parties. The place is packed like there's no tomorrow. This festival happens every year, and it's one of the best shifts. Even though it's a lot of work and around 17 hours of work, walking home with $1,000 in tips is worth it. So the new guy has a spot at a very good selling bar. I was providing and delivering drinks there like crazy. After a long shift, when everything is done and they do their calculations, he brings the money to the treasury, looks at me, says cold-blooded, "Thank you, have a good night. Tonight was a good night to work," and walks away without giving me my tip. That was it, folks. I kept doing my job every time he had a shift at one of the bars like nothing happened, and I was just waiting for a full-packed night to come. Finally, after a week, it was time. Again, the place is fully packed. His first order arrived on my tablet. Sadly, I was too busy to deliver. 1 hour passes. He tries to call me on my phone. I can't hear it since I'm conveniently standing next to a subwoofer. 1.5 hours go by. A second order arrives from him. I didn't even deliver the first one. Sadly, I was again too busy. Then, after a half hour, the shift manager calls me on the radio. The shift manager was also doing this job before getting a better position there. "Hey, what the F is going on? Why does he have no drinks to sell?" "I'm busy with the rest of the bars. The guests can go to the other bars." "Are you serious? That guy can only sell water, and everything else is empty." "He can sell water, but no one tips a bartender for water, right?" Small pause on the radio. "You can't be effing serious. He's leaving no tip for you guys?" "Yep, you guessed right. I'm sending this idiot home." I think another unspoken rule of life is don't mess with people's money. Like seriously. Half of the stories on this subreddit could probably be avoided if people just gave each other what they're owed. One more unspoken rule, pressing the like button on my videos makes me very happy, so I'd appreciate it if you did so. Wage theft revenge. I worked in maintenance for a religious organization that owned a large number of elderly care facilities. Even though they were supposedly not-for-profit, they went all out to scam the government for as much money as they could. For example, I once saw a claim for wandering behavior in a bedridden resident, so they could claim he had dementia, put him in a locked ward, and get extra money. I became aware that they were paying less than the minimum wage for many of the non-nursing staff. a high percentage of housekeeping were from overseas. In my country, you can claim back wages for 6 years, and it just so happened I was about to reach that mark, and I was thoroughly sick of their hypocrisy. I scheduled a meeting with the care manager and human resources. In the meeting, I requested to be paid the correct wage. After they realized I was not going to back down, they agreed to pay me correctly and would back pay me, but only if I didn't tell the other employees. I declined, and it ended up costing them over $700,000 to back pay everyone. I was recording the conversation and took them to Fair Work, an independent workplace ombudsman. They made everyone with the same job description as me redundant because they couldn't think of a way to legally fire me, and then outsourced maintenance, which ended up costing them much more. I took a nice holiday with the redundancy pay and informed the government elderly care regulator about the fraud, with documented proof, of course. They were inspected with a fine-tooth comb, and 2 of their flagship homes were put under 6 months constant government supervision. Always remember that wage theft is the largest crime wave in history, it is ongoing, and no one ever goes to jail for it. It really is crazy that businesses find ways to get around minimum wage laws. I don't understand the specifics, but if your business needs to pay people next to nothing in order to survive, maybe it's not a good business. Just like the first story, pay people what they're owed. Mock the disabled? Justice is served many years later. This is a story about a piece of crap receiving their deserved karma several years later. Many years ago, I worked in the lovely career field of retail. It's sadly normal for there to be a constant flow of shop scum that make you despise their existence, and there are those that are so horrific that what they do is burned into your mind forever. Fortunately, one of these unforgettable moments allowed me to extract my revenge. I had only worked in retail for 1 year in this newly built store, and was starting to settle in. Getting to know the great customers and understanding that some people shouldn't be allowed outside, which, being a shy person who hates conflict, wasn't the best. But at least one of my customers was an absolutely adorable elderly lady who always made time to talk and was an absolute joy to be with. It had been some weeks since I had last seen her, but one morning, I saw her car pull into the disabled parking bay, as she already has a blue badge. Only this time, she hobbled out of the car on crutches with a pot on her leg. I didn't have a chance to talk to her yet when a work truck, which did not have a blue disabled badge, pulled into the disabled space next to her and out-jumped an early 40s builder with their teenage kid. Well, this little old lady was having none of this and must have absolutely massive balls of steel, and stood up to this ignorant builder and politely informed them that they shouldn't be parking there, as it's for the disabled and he doesn't have a badge. What happened next, I can't forget. This builder decided the best course of action was to humiliate and insult this poor elderly lady in crutches, accuse her of faking her disability, and claim the cast on her leg was a fake, and that she probably milks the benefit system for as much money as possible. Then he walks off, putting on an overdramatic fake limp, laughing away with their teenage kid, whilst the old lady stood there in shock. Sadly, being one who lacks courage, I did absolutely nothing about it, and that would stick with me forever. I tried feebly to ask a manager later to do something about it, but they didn't care or want to get involved. For years, I worked in this store, always seeing this scum builder come in and out. Fortunately, I never interacted with him, but I saw him often, and every time I did, I would always remember what they had done vividly. I would still see them park in the disabled bays, and even got to the point where I would recognize them by the large blue Mercedes they drove. 7 years later, I was still working in this store, and this scum was still parking in disabled parking. But this year, I was blessed with good fortune, and our store was outfitted with some absolutely joyful equipment. Due to a high number of complaints, our store had set up a company to deal with the parking violations. However, instead of having external parties coming in and ticketing cars, the staff of the store were given the ticketing machine, and it was our duty to go to the car park and record any cars that violated the parking rules. This was brilliant. As soon as I found out, I knew what I was going to do. It didn't take long for me to learn how to use the machine, and it certainly didn't take long for the opportunity to get revenge. And so, it began. There were 3 rules for parking, and if you break these rules, there is a lovely £80 fine each time it happened. The first rule, no parking in disabled without a badge. And I know well that the scum builder is certainly violating this rule. It wasn't long until I saw him again. As soon as he entered the store, I quickly scurried out with the ticketing machine. Lo and behold, there was the oversized blue Mercedes in the closest disabled bay, with no badge. I smashed their car details in with some well-shot photos and sent the report off so that they would receive a lovely letter of their fine they would be asked to pay. That's not enough though. Fortunately, it takes weeks for them to finally receive the ticket, which grants me the opportunity to constantly ticket their parking violations. As you would expect, the scum would always park in disabled, and as I worked at the front of the store, I would always know when they had parked. After ticketing their car dozens of times, the scum unfortunately learned their lesson as their oversized blue Mercedes no longer appeared in disabled parking bays. As you expect, the scum would still be scum, and they would find their new parking space inside child parking. Rule 2. Don't park inside child parking without a child. Had the scum had enough, I thought? Of course not. They haven't learned their lesson and continued to be a complete wanker and park in the child parking, which we didn't have many spaces for. At this point, I knew all their car details by heart and would gleefully fill out the ticket machine as I skipped over to their car violating the child parking, and taking the photos needed for them, including shots of their car seats that bear no child seats in them. As it became a routine, this once again carried on a few weeks, more tickets being created, and eventually they started receiving the fines. Fortunately, me being me, I am completely invisible to others and often looked over, and I have yet to be seen or caught. As all good things must eventually come to an end, when the scum came into the shop, their blue turd automobile was no longer there in child parking or disabled. Has the scum finally learnt their lesson? Would you be surprised if they had not? As it didn't take me long to find them. Rule 3. You must park inside a marked bay. And what a surprise, the scum still manages to F this up. They would park over the line, taking 2 spaces up. Well, guess what? That's a job for me and my ticket machine. Trying to park inside taxi parking, but can't fit the big car in it? Boom. That ain't inside a marked bay, and ka-ching, another ticket and fine for him. Have one single wheel slightly over the white line of a bay? Well, guess who technically broke the rule? That's right, Scumbag did. There goes a few more weeks of fun until eventually Scumbag runs out of ways that they can possibly break the rules, and our company hires externally to start ticketing cars. So my beloved weapon of justice goes to rest. Now, I know what people are probably going to say, that all these fines are not enforceable because of blah blah blah, but I honestly don't care for a few reasons. Firstly, I'm being paid to do this, so either way, my time or money isn't wasted. Secondly, it did have an effect as they repeatedly changed their parking habits. Third, even if they don't end up paying, they are still going to spend a F-ton of time and effort trying to overturn them over and over again, having to constantly be harassed by mail. Overall, if all the fines are counted separately and added up, they would have received thousands of pounds worth of fines. Cherry on top, about 3 years later, I walk by this piece of scum in the car park and watch as they scream at some innocent dude in a high-vis jacket, accusing them for being the one giving them all the parking fines. This put me at peace, knowing this must have seriously got to him and caused him to still be raving mad after 3 years. It's crazy how some people just never learn. The Scumbag guy just kept trying to find ways to bend the rules, no matter how many tickets he got. Even if OP is right and he never has to pay them, I'm hoping it at least taught him to think twice before parking somewhere he shouldn't. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.